All right, this is your Unit 1 multiple choice study guide. I will be going over a couple of the highlights here from Unit 1. You are welcome to just listen along. You are welcome to listen and write as you go. Today I'll talk about economic factors, cultural factors, geographic factors that dealt with or that influenced the settlement and development of the colonies. I will discuss the impact that colonization had on the natives. And then finally, we will look at the 13 colonies and their relationship with England. All right. So some economic factors that influence the settlement and development of the colonies. We want to start from the beginning. Christopher Columbus, remember he sailed under the Spanish flag, and he is the European that is credited with starting the settlement between the old world, Europe, Asia, Africa, and the New World, North and South America. He is going to start the Spanish exploration and settlement of the Americas. And remember, the Spanish were really out there for gold, God, and glory. And if we want to focus on just the economic factors, with the Spanish motivation for gold, we saw the rise of the encomienda system with the Native Americans. We saw the we also saw the development of the Columbian Exchange as well. These are all examples of how the Spanish tried to capitalize on their settlement of the New World in attempts to gain more money and more wealth. The English, their economic factors that influenced the settlement and development of the colonies. Gold at first. Remember, the primary reason why England started the settlement at Jamestown was due to a joint stock company. A joint stock company is just a group of investors that are financially supporting a settlement in the New World in hopes to gain a profit. Remember, in Jamestown, the settlement was struggling at first. They were not finding any gold, and it's not going to be until a couple years into the settlement that the cash crop of tobacco will be introduced to the Virginia and Southern colonies. And so economic factors that will influence the settlement and development of the English colonies, cash crops like tobacco, especially in the South, tobacco and rice will be the two big ones. In the middle colonies, you see wheat and corn. And you also, just in general, from the English colonies, you see natural resources. These are all part of the triangle trade routes and support mercantilism, which we'll talk about here in just a second. The French we haven't talked about very much. They were there primarily just for the fur trade. So talking about mercantilism. Mercantilism is an economic system. This is one of your flashcards, and it's a theory. And under mercantilism, Great Britain expected its American colonies to provide raw materials. These are the natural resources, such as tobacco, rice, wheat, corn. If you're up there in New England, lumber or timber, whichever one you want to call it. They were also there to provide Great Britain with markets, all right, for British products. So the manufacturers in Great Britain, they could sell their products in the colonies, and therefore they could make more money because you have more customers. Also, some economic factors that influence the development of the colonies. The Triangle Trade Route. This is the trade route from Europe to Africa, Africa to the Americas, and the Americas back to Europe. And so if you were faced with a map, it would show a bunch of different trade routes from Europe to Africa, Africa with the Middle Passage, or the transportation of slaves to the Americas, and the Americas with those raw materials back to Europe. So it would actually look like a triangle, and these are a bunch of these colonial trade routes that make up the triangle trade route. Some cultural factors here that influence the settlement and development of the colonies. First of all, we would want to know that the colonies are broken up into 3 regions. The southern colonies, this is Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. The middle colonies, Pennsylvania, Delaware, New York, and New Jersey. And the New England colonies, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. And some important characteristics of the southern colonies. Remember that these are going to be mostly males. They're there to farm, so they're going to be mostly males. Some important events there. Jamestown is the first settlement in the southern colonies. You'll see Bacon's Rebellion was an important event in the southern colonies when you had the lower classes, or the former indentured servants of Jamestown, rebelling against the upper classes and the large plantation owners. We talked about the effects that Bacon's Rebellion had. Some important people for the southern colonies, namely John Smith. He was the one that told Jamestown that you either had to work or you don't eat. So, really organizing Jamestown into a successful colony. The middle colonies, characteristics, they had some farming and plantation, namely wheat and rice. If you looked in the western part of the middle colonies, definitely farming is going to be number 1. If you looked on the East Coast, a lot of the, and this is a characteristic that's similar to most of the colonial regions, a lot of the cities are found on the East Coast. These are where the port cities are going to be. These are the cities where the trading and the goods are coming in and out of the colonies. Some important people: William Penn. He was the founder of Pennsylvania, and we had discussed how Pennsylvania was his holy experiment, and he wanted religious toleration for his religious group, the Quakers, and anybody else. And another important characteristic for the middle colonies, diversity. If you wanted to say one word that summed up the middle colonies, diversity. A large amount of immigrant groups are coming to the middle colonies: Germans, Scots-Irish, English, Dutch. Everybody and anybody are coming to the middle colonies. In New England, the Puritans will be the main group there. Remember, they founded the New England colonies based on religious freedom, and religious freedom just for them. So with New England, their characteristics, rocky soil, harsh climate. So you're going to have very small farms. They're going to grow only staple crops, and they're going to be more focused on commerce, more focused on fishing, timber. They're going to be focused on democracy. That's a big characteristic with New England. Town hall meetings and the idea of self-government and majority rules. So going on, geographic factors. The South, remember, fertile soil, warm climate. This is going to allow for the increased use of indentured servants, later slaves, to grow those cash crops. Middle colonies, agriculture for sure, but also commerce and trading. A lot of those port cities that are found on the coast, like Philadelphia and New York, are going to be found in the middle colonies. And New England, small farms that grow staple crops thanks to the rocky soil and harsh climate. And their economies, based on the geography, are going to be rooted in fishing, trade, and things like timber. What's the impact that colonization has on the natives? Well, really, it doesn't matter if you're Spanish or English. The one desire there, and this goes back to our statement of inquiry, is that there is a need for resources. And unfortunately for the Native Americans, you see that conflict over resources between them and the Europeans are going to result in war. Pope's rebellion with the Spanish, the Pequot War, the King Philip's War with the English. And as a result of this war and conflict over resources, you're going to see the Native Americans lose their land, and you're going to see the Native Americans also die off in large numbers due to disease. There's other differences here, but that would be the main reason or the main cause of conflict between Native Americans and Europeans, is that need for resources. Finally, these colonies, what type of relationship did we have with the English? And we really focused on this when we focused on the forging of American identity. So remember, England thinks that the colonies, or believes that the colonies, exist solely for their benefit. Great Britain expects its colonies to provide raw materials, natural resources, and markets, essentially customers that will buy up British products. This is mercantilism. With mercantilism, the British put this belief into practice with the Navigation Acts. The Navigation Acts will restrict colonial trade, making it, a requirement to only trade with Great Britain. The other relationship that they had with England is, or the colonies had with England, is that there's this back and forth over the idea of self-government. How much of a say, or how much freedom in establishing and running their own governments will England give the colonies? In the 1600s, you saw that England tried to restrict the self-government of the colonies. The colonies had town hall meetings. The colonies had representative government like Virginia House of Burgesses down in Virginia. And in the 1680s, King James II decided that there was too much freedom and too much self-government in the colonies. So he decided to revoke or take away the charters of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and then even down in the middle colonies with New York and New Jersey. He revoked or took away their right to exist, or their charters. And he said, you're now no longer individual colonies with your own governments. You are now placed under one big colony, and you're supposed to respond to one person, a royal governor who's appointed by me, the king. The Dominion of New England took or restricted freedom and took the idea of self-government away from the colonies. This was very, very unpopular. Luckily for the colonies, just a couple years into it, in 1688, the Glorious Revolution happened over in England. And when King James II was kicked out and William and Mary were brought in, as a result, the Parliament and England gave the charters back to their colonies. So as a result of the Glorious Revolution, the colonies are able to establish a self-rule or self-government again. This is also an example of salutary neglect. After this Glorious Revolution, the English practiced something called salutary neglect, where they didn't strictly enforce the rules or the laws that Parliament made. So the Navigation Acts, for instance, not strictly enforced under salutary neglect. Virginia House of Burgesses, that representative government in Virginia, allowed to pretty much do what they wanted to under salutary neglect. The town hall meetings that we said were so characteristic of New England and their colonies, they were allowed to thrive under salutary neglect. So self-government really thrived under this period of time where Great Britain really didn't crack down or strictly enforce their rules. And the key thing to remember here is that this comes at the end or as a result of the Glorious Revolution. Something to consider here is, does this set up potential problems for Great Britain and the colonies when salutary neglect is going to end? Because it will end, and Great Britain will try to strictly enforce the Navigation Acts and strictly crack down on the laws that the colonial governments can make, and the laws that they have to follow, and the taxes they have to pay. And so we want to remember this idea of salutary neglect and self-government, because it's really setting up for some really bad tension between the colonies of Great Britain when this ends. I hope this has been helpful, and do well on the test.